Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast, where we empower you with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom. I'm Josh Metal, and I'm here today with Dr. Tom Burns, a.k.a. the Rich Doctor. Tom's a former orthopedic surgeon, a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin and Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. He received his sports medicine training at the prestigious Steadman Hawkins Fellowship in Vail, Colorado, and a physician for the United States ski team. That was just getting warmed up, the first half of his life. Over 25 years of real estate experience, both locally and internationally, involving multiple real estate asset classes. In addition to his real estate experience, he has co-founded, managed, and sold a freestanding full-service hospital. Tom has been a member of the Forbes Real Estate Council and is the author of the best-selling book, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich, and is recognized in Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This interview has been a long time coming. I'm very happy to have you with us today, Tom. How are you?
I'm great, Josh. Thanks for being so patient with me and my schedule.
Oh, my pleasure, my friend. I mentioned to you earlier, I feel like the distance just made this moment more exciting for me. And I'm excited to share your wealth of wisdom and knowledge and your journey with our audience. So let's maybe kick right in with this very interesting path that you've lived, this path that you've walked down. Walk us through your journey from medical school to becoming the rich doctor advisor that you are today.
Sure. And hopefully the story will help people know anybody can do this. I started life as a guy with good hand-eye coordination and was good at school. So I thought I was going to be an athlete, right? I got the tap on the shoulder that nobody was going to pay me to play sports. So I had to pivot a little bit and decided to be an orthopedic surgeon and a sports medicine guy so I could hang out with athletes because that's who I understood. So I did that. I went to med school, did that thing, went to orthopedics and did residency. And all during that time, no business classes, no real estate classes, all, biology and trying to get into med school, right? So I'm partway through residency. That's about 5 years of training, a sixth one for that sports fellowship. I'm about 50, 60% through the training and started noticing the doctors that were training me. The way you train as a doctor is you go learn all this stuff and you're trained by the guys that are 10, 20, 40 years older than you. Those are the guys you're supposed to emulate when that's me in 20, 30 years, right? I didn't, they were great guys. They were probably making some good money. I personally actually didn't know what doctors made. I just knew I could go hang out with athletes, but they were making some good money, but they were in the hospital at 10, 11 o'clock at night. They were on their second or third marriage. They were complaining about lack of control and complaining about their life. And I'm trying to figure out why I'm making pennies an hour and these guys are making all this money and they're not happy. So that happened enough times that, God tapped me on the shoulder and let me realize that I didn't really want their money if I had to have their life. So I started thinking about that and realized that I probably need something that was not correlated to medicine. I just needed something bringing in a little income. I thought that might give me a little choice in my life. It was vague thoughts. It wasn't super crystallized. And so I started looking. I look to go in administration because, as I tell people, when you're wearing scrubs all the time, to wear a suit and carry a briefcase looks pretty cool. But I also found out that was a job and it was a dead end job. And so I found out I was unemployable, didn't have any money or time to mess with the stock market, didn't have the chops or the money or the time to work on a business, and went to a few free seminars and understood the numbers, somehow landed on real estate or got exposed to real estate and realized that it moved slow. You didn't have to be first in. You didn't have to time things perfect. You could do it part-time or full-time, which fit a busy schedule. And you could do it with partners or by yourself, which also fits somebody with a busy schedule. So I just started learning. And as I tell everybody, this was before Al Gore invented the internet. So I had to look up books and talk to people that knew things and, learned what I could and finished my training, came back to Austin, Texas, where I lived, was pretty much broke at the time, but had a really good job that was going to pay me some good money. So the credit cards were maxed and all that stuff. And I paid off a few bills. And once I got to a point where I I kind of was ready to go. I just jumped in and bought something. That's exactly what happened. I just bought something. I learned a ton with that. I didn't know how to get an appraisal. I didn't know how to get debt. I didn't know how much money I needed, all that stuff. But there were people in that transaction that kind of guided me, told me where to go. The manager of the property told me where to get this and that. I fumbled through it, finished getting that property. And a month or two later, I got a check. It was awesome. It wasn't a big check, $100 or something like that. But that was a check that I got that didn't require me to see patients, do surgery, put in my time. And it was pretty cool. And it was, quite honestly, it was addicting. And so I liked that. So I went and did it again. I was a little faster at the next one. I knew more stuff. And so it happened a little faster. I got really good at that market and got to where I could buy those things sight unseen. I was buying student condominiums at the University of Texas. So those all started cash flowing. Over time, I realized I kind of hit somewhat of a ceiling. I was doing well. I was just doing my doctor thing, growing a practice, to be honest with you, buying some real estate. And I liked it so much that I thought I was hitting a ceiling and still didn't have podcasts and things yet. So I went to a friend of mine who was a developer and in real estate. And I said, look, I like what you do. Will you teach me? He looked at me and he said, well, you're a rich doctor. You don't need to know this stuff. I said, teach me anyway. So, and he's a real good friend and still is to this day. Anyway, so I worked for him for probably 18 months for free, doing land deals, build-to-suits, things like that. And out of that, morphed a rather large medical complex that he and I built together and still own to this day. So I learned a lot from him along the so as things are, the projects are getting a little bit bigger. Some people were asking me to speak here and there. And our friend we just talked about, Robert Kiyosaki, he had me speak on stage for him at one point, and he introduced me, said, Tom's a doctor, and he's from Austin, Texas. And at the break, somebody came up, nice woman came up, and she and her fiance said, hey, we're moving from California to Austin. Would you be our friend, our contact in Austin? And I said, yes. And we got to be friends. And 6 or 7 years later, he and I realized we had the same philosophy, same thought process. He was doing real estate. And the reason I tell that story is he's my current partner in my private equity firm that I have here in Austin. So, life's fairly serendipitous, but always step after step after step. And, I started listening to podcasts, going to seminars. And when you do that, you start meeting other people. And, I think I've just been blessed and been allowed to kind of climb the ladder all the way up, starting at zero with no previous education. And it's really been a fun ride.
Tom, there were a lot of nuggets in there. Thanks for sharing that. The first thing I wrote down was that you realize that money doesn't equal happiness, and that sometimes we can trade time for money. And we think that when we have money, right, when we're young, we think, well, when we have money, we're going to be happy. And then we create that job that we have to trade our time for. And now we have the money and we're like, well, how come I'm not happier?
Right.
I wish I had some of that time back.
Exactly.
So I love that. I remember when I was I think I was probably 18 years old. I was on a little trip with my dad. We were sailing over to Catalina. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I got to figure out how I can make money while I'm off work, because this off work thing is pretty cool. And I got to figure out how to do that and make money. And similarly to you, Kiyosaki touched me on the shoulder just through his books. I've never met him, but he touched me on the shoulder and enlightened me that there is a way to decouple time from money. And when you have money and you have a little more time and a little more freedom, life gets a little happier. It's a little easier.
Absolutely. Money can make you happy. If you are destitute and don't know where your next meal's coming from or don't have a roof over your head, absolutely, money can make you happy. But you reach that level of comfort, and there's a lot of other pillars to wealth and a rich life, so to speak. It's your health, your social condition, your education, your spirituality. There's just a lot of things that go along with it, and money's just one piece of it.
Yeah, well said. The other thing that you said that I took note of, Tom, was you said, I jumped in with both feet and I just bought a house. And similarly to you, I grew up in a family multi-generationally that had some properties. I read books, but you really can't learn in theory all that you need to know without jumping in and making that first investment. And boy, that just warp speeds your learning curve and your process there. So was the first house that you bought, just out of curiosity for people who are thinking, how do I get started? Was it an owner occupied home? Was it an investment property? What was the very first property you purchased?
Sure. It was about a 480 square foot condominium at the University of Texas. Somehow they put 2 bedrooms and 1 bath in that size. Maybe it's 600 square feet, but anyway, yeah. And I had a relative that was going to be a tenant, so it was just a condominium. I'm not a big fan of condos because there's HOA fees and stuff that you really can't control. But I bought a bunch of them, and so that's what it was. It was just a small property, and I'll tell it was a long time ago, so the price was like $83,000. So I didn't have what I put, 19 grand down or something like that. But boy, the lessons were phenomenal. You learn when you've got your money on the line. That's and right. You're having to go through it at one time, you learn everything really fast. And that's why the second one was light years faster. And the third one was a breeze. And the fourth one I bought without looking at it. I just knew it was going to be a good deal, just bought it. So you learn a ton by jumping in. And so if you jump in small, then your mistakes will be small. Your wins might be a little smaller, but your education will be huge.
Boy, that is super well said, Tom. There's no way, as I look back, I could have gotten to where I am today without making mistakes. And I'm glad I did it on $80,000 condos and $100,000 houses instead of $20 million office buildings.
Right.
So
right.
That is very, very well said. Now, Tom, one of the things that I've noticed with doctors, and I'll just say medical professionals, because there's a lot of subspecialties out there, is that they tend to prefer paper assets. Stocks, bonds, index funds. And the reason that I hear from them why that's the way they've gone is because they're so focused on their craft of practicing medicine, raising a family, that they really don't have the time to invest in real estate. So you decoupled that. And I'm just curious if you'd go a little bit deeper as to why you prefer tangible real estate assets as compared to paper assets. And then maybe the follow-up question would be, how do you do that with a busy surgeon schedule?
You bet. So yeah, it makes sense. Anybody that's busy, and a lot of people are good at what they do and like what they do. Most doctors like what they do. They didn't get into it for the money. The vast majority of doctors did not get into it for the money. They got into it for various reasons. And it's a good profession. It provides a great income, but very busy. And so that makes sense that, on Sunday mornings, you see ads from Schwab and TD Ameritrade and E-Trade and all that stuff. It's all out there. It's easy. The first seminar I went to as a medical professional when I was in training was a financial planner who was giving a free seminar. Well, that was a lead generator for future business. Nothing wrong with that. That's actually what got me to understand the numbers. So there's a lot more marketing out there. The barrier to entry to the equities market is almost absent. I just put in a little bit of money, you put in $10, you can put in 10 million. So it makes sense. And there's that statement that I actually don't like to hear when somebody says, I really am an investor. I've got a guy, so I give my money to this guy and I leave my investing to the professionals. So I tend to try to counsel against that because, your money is your money and your advisor it could be the best person in the world, but he or she wants to feed their family before they want to feed yours. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but push comes to shove, they need to feed their family. So that's one reason why a lot of busy people go to the equities market. It's available, it's marketed, there's nothing wrong with it. It's another leg of the wealth building scheme. Mm-hmm. But so that they've now a lot of professionals, really doctors are just an avatar for anybody who have to trade their time to make their money. That's what we do. Most of us, we trade a bit of time, we get paid by the hour, the job, whatever. And so a lot of people have now become a little more aware of the real estate market over the last 10 and 15 years. It used to be something that was, quote, risky, scary. And, I don't know if I want to do that. So now they become more involved in it. And there are other ways you can be involved. You can be involved passively in the real estate business just as much as you can in the paper markets. Before we go into that, the reason Tom Burns likes real estate, and I was in the paper markets. I was in stocks and things like that. I got out right before I got killed in 2001. Got some lessons. Was still in it in about 2008, and a little bird told me, a little bird in my head said maybe I ought to get my money out, and I gloated as it went down to 6,700. And gloated as it went all the way up to 34,000, didn't get back in. So, I'm maybe not the smartest guy in the world. There was some profit to be made, but I stuck with real estate. I like the hard asset component of real estate. I like hard assets, meaning something that's a hard asset is not necessarily going to lose its value. While the dollar itself has lost 96% of its purchasing power over the last 100 years, a piece of equipment or a house maintains its value. So when you buy a house, it's X amount of dollars today. In 5 years, 5 years from now, maybe it's worth more. But is the house really worth more, or does it just take more dollars to buy that house? So that's why I like real estate, because it's a hard asset. It's a hedge against inflation. And then there's all the four pillars of real estate that I just love, which is the cash flow that you get from real estate, the appreciation you get as inflation goes up, the amortization, which is essentially somebody else paying down your loan. If you own a house and you got somebody renting it, they're giving you money to rent the house. They're the ones paying down the note. That's what we call good debt, right? And then the fourth leg is the depreciation, which is tax benefits that the government is very happy to give you. So real estate's magic in some cases, particularly this time of year. I'll tell you, I just got a message Friday from my CPA. It said, "Tom, we just want to let you know we're extending your taxes," which I do every year, but we've estimated you'll pay zero taxes this year. So, and that's happened a number of years in a row. So I would like everybody to get that kind of message from their CPA. So there's a big reason I like real estate.
All right. Well, we're going to dig a little deeper into those, and I want to go into. I assume you're doing tax segregations to offset income for last year. So we're gonna get into that just a little bit. There was something that you alluded to earlier. I want to talk a little deeper about. I own a certain allocation of my cash or wealth in paper assets, but it is a very small percentage of my overall net worth. It's probably only 10%, maybe somewhere between 7 and 10%. And when I think about those assets, I realize that I am very mistake prone because I'm trying to time the market. I'm trying to, when's as you said, you got the right information, the knock on the shoulder, it was time to get out, but nobody opened the door back up to tell you to get back in. And right. So one of the things that's helped me is I've broken down in my mind the difference between an investment and speculation. An investment for me is something that I anticipate to hold 5 or more years. And something I expect to hold 5 or less years is speculation. And you talked a little bit about, time in the market, and that real estate, is a very long held asset. And so maybe we could just go a little bit deeper there on how you look at real estate versus paper assets in terms of the time horizon that you anticipate. And I'm just curious, do you ever try to time the market with your real estate, or are you more, just let this baby run and increase the cash flow?
Yeah, and much like the equities market, if you look at the equities market over time, you expand the timeline, and it kind of takes out all that volatility, and things do keep going up. So same with the real estate. So I look at. I'm not a speculator because, like as you said, I think I'm a bad speculator.
Me too.
I have found emotion gets in the way, FOMO starts working, and I always am really good at making the wrong decisions. So I like to get in and let it run. Time is one of the best investment hacks in the world. It'll make a bad deal look good. It'll make a good deal look great, particularly in the real estate world. So, and that's how I view the equities market, and necessary. And I'll probably be back in the equities market at some point. You get a certain amount of money, you've got to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
And a lot of wealth has been created there. It's just, for me, the real estate's worked. Same thing with the real estate market. It's long term. Like now, we're in a really, really bubbly, frothy market, and it doesn't take Einstein to predict that there's gonna be a hiccup here soon. So it's not if, it's when. And the problem is you need to be as diligent as you can, but stay in the market so you can see when things change. So you know when it turns down, or when it turns around. So if you're diligent, conservative in both the equities market and the real estate market, you won't win all the time, but you've got a much greater chance of winning way more times than you lose. And that's the whole premise of investing, is to just win more times than you lose, and continue to increase that cash flow and increase your wealth.
Yeah, that's great. I'll just flush that out by sharing that I firmly believe that timing the market is luck for most of us, unless you're Warren Buffett or somebody who has a distinct advantage over the rest of humankind. But time in the market forgives all. I mean, I remember the first condo I bought with my mother. I've been partners with her for 22 years. I think we bought our first investment property together, and we still own this condo today, actually, Tom. And we bought that property, and by the time we had finished renovating it, there had been 4 other foreclosures or short sales in the condominium complex, and we were down 35% in 90 days. So, you want to talk about just throwing $100 bills in the fireplace. We were dang good at that. And we decided, well, all right, we can't sell this thing, so we'll just rent it out and see what happens. And by the grace of God, we were able to come away with a $75 a month cash flow. And that money came in every month after we paid the expenses. HOA fees, didn't have a tremendous amount of overhead. Fast forward 22 years later, that's a $400,000 condominium. We've paid off the mortgage, and it spins off $1,500 a month. So to your point, time will even allow you to recover from timing the market wrong if you just hold on and have positive cash flow.
And you brought up a good point. A lot of times, and I'm just to clarify, I'm not talking bad about the equities market. I'm going to be back in it at some point. It's just real estate's worked for me. Most of the time in the equities market, you want to buy low and hope that it goes up and sell high at some point. There is dividend investing. Real estate, you can do the same thing. You can try to flip a house. You could have been buying that condo to flip it. You'd have been underwater at that time, but you were buying it for cash flow. And so somebody asked me just the other day, what do you do? Doesn't it bother you if prices are, what if prices go down because, interest rates are going up and inflation? What if prices go down? I said, I really don't have to be concerned with that if I'm investing for cash flow. As long as there's enough cash flow, I don't really care what the appraisal says on that property. In fact, the appraisal goes down, my taxes go down. So, and you just illustrated that. Bad market, foreclosures, you bought at the wrong time, the value went down, but your cash flow was in the black, and it just got better and better as the years went on.
That's right. All right, I want to dive into something else that you said, because I think this is really fascinating, and it's obviously in the headlines, and that is inflation. And, you said that over the last 100 years, I believe what I heard you say was over the last 100 years, the dollar's purchasing power or value, if you will, is down 96%.
Right.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. I'm curious how you view real estate through that lens or perspective that the dollar's being devalued. And also I'm curious how you look at debt on real estate in the frame of the highest inflation in 40 years. And does debt look more favorable or less favorable to you in an inflationary market because of the devaluation of the dollar?
Good question. I certainly, we're obviously starting our inflationary times, so we've been in it for a while, and it's here to stay. So again, purchasing power will go down. Again, it's not that properties or this computer that we're using is going up in value. It's just that it takes more of those dollars to buy the worth of that computer or that car or that house. So it's going up. It does increase prices, but as on one end, as inflation goes up, the cost of goods, cost of services go up as well. So as the inflation rises and the cost of an apartment complex or a house or something rises, typically so does rent. There's a time when there's an inflection point in those numbers, but typically things rise. And so as far as assets inflate, that's again a hard asset. That's why I like having those hard assets in real estate in inflationary times, because it's valued, but it costs more to buy those. Value goes up, appraisal rises. That's a good thing. Then you couple that with debt, which is, I love debt. In particular, I like debt I don't have to pay back. So most of my debt's called non-recourse, which means I don't sign personally on the note. And that's what happens when you have bigger properties in the apartment market and a lot of things like that. So debt is wonderful. And that's it. That leverage, number one, it gives you leverage, which helps you grow your portfolio. Leverage is a two-edged sword, but properly used leverage will let you grow your portfolio. And if you just think about it, if you get a loan at whatever, now things are rising 4%, 5%, whatever. It seems high to a lot of people right now, but I got a story for that. If you lock that thing in at 4.5% today for 30 years, every year you're paying that, whatever that payment is, if it's $1,000 a month, whatever that thing, you're still going to pay $1,000 a month today. And 360 months later, you're still paying $1,000. Well, I can tell you 30 years from now, that $1,000 is going to have a lot less buying power. So you're paying off your mortgage with cheaper and cheaper and cheaper dollars. So debt will make you wealthy.
That's a great way to say it.
So it's super important. And I tell you, and the little segue is that, we're going up. I just got a loan on something and I got 5.15%. It's a second home, it's a personal thing. Not too excited about that rate. But I think back when I bought my first house, I was actually in training as a doctor. We got 10% on the mortgage and we were pretty excited and it worked. So rates will go up. It still works. So, I just don't want your listeners to be fearful. It was not a lot of fun in the 70s when rates were up in the teens. I was a little young at the time, but it always still works. So we're still in historically low times. So if you've got something you want to buy, if you're paying 5% or 6%, that's still pretty low. So debt will be your friend.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Focus on the cash flow, not on the interest rate.
Right.
We had a gentleman on the podcast. His name's Jason Hartman. Do you know Jason by chance?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And he has this term that's a mouthful. It's inflation-induced debt destruction. Yeah, that's it. And sometimes when I repeat that saying, I see the eyes glaze over. They're like, "You lost me at inflation-induced." I didn't hear anything after that. But as we're sitting in this highest inflation market that we've seen, certainly in my lifetime, it is apparent to me that someone who holds assets and has fixed rate debt is winning, and somebody who doesn't have those assets is not. They are being punished by this inflation at a much greater magnitude. And I want to just try to illustrate this, if I could. Each year, once I lock in a payment, as you said, that payment's $1,000 a month or $20,000 a month if it's a commercial building, whatever it is, that payment is constant, assuming you've got a fixed rate loan for a certain number of years. Inflation drives wages because the economy is overheating. Companies need to hire to have growth. When companies compete against each other to hire, they pull the lever of higher wages, and that pushes wages up, which allows people to pay more money for rent, and they can now pay more for other goods and services that are inflated. So as inflation kicks in, wages go up, your rents are going to also go up because now people can afford those higher rental amounts, but your payment stays at $1,000 a month. And so your rent amount may have started here, and the delta between your rent and your mortgage payment's only $75 a month, as it was when I bought that condo 20 years ago. But over the last 22 years, the rent on that property has gone from $350 a month to $1,495 a month. So as the dollar's been devalued, it has pushed rents up via the mechanism of inflation, but my payment stayed the same. And then eventually my payment actually just went away because the mortgage balance was so low. I just said, I'm tired of writing that check every month. Let's just get rid of that thing. And I think that if I wouldn't have traveled that journey over the last 22 years, it's really hard to understand that. But the inflation that's happening because you're raising the rents is literally devaluating the debt. And if we look at it from like a debt to income ratio perspective, let's say you had $1,000 a month going out and you made $4,000. You had $4,000 of income. That means 25% of your income was going to pay for that mortgage. But over 10 years, let's say your income goes from $4,000 to $8,000 a month. Now you've got a $7,000 gap between your income and what that payment is. In other words, the dollar or the mortgage debt has been deflated as your income rises. So I like to try to make that tangible and understandable for people who haven't been in the real estate game for 20 years. Is there anything you'd add or better explain that?
That was a really good explanation. Sort of the simple way is you own a house, you're getting, like you said, you're getting your payment's $1,000 a month, you're getting $4,000 in revenue. What was I going to say about this? You're paying lower percentage of your revenue, which you just said, you're just essentially making more money.
That's right.
It's just the debt is going to stay the same for years and years and years. It'll be less and less and less of a bother and less noticeable for you because the revenue numbers go up. I had a better way to explain it, but I lost it. But you did a great job.
Well, I mean, that illustration I was talking about, essentially on the onset, it took 25% of my income to pay that mortgage. But 10 years later, it only took 12% of my income. So that mortgage payment now feels very inconsequential. It works the same if you're talking about an owner-occupied property or if you're talking about an investment property. Either your wages go up or your rents go up. But either way, what stays constant is that mortgage payment, which takes up a smaller proportion of your income.
Right.
Really powerful.
It's super powerful. And what you're not noticing is there's also amortization. You're also paying that loan down. So
that's right.
It's crazy.
So let's go into that. You said, as a real estate investor, I get paid 4 ways: cash flow, appreciation, amortization, and depreciation.
Yeah.
I think we talked about cash flow pretty well over time as inflation goes up and the cost of goods and services go up, rents go up. We're seeing the most recent data I saw, Tom, is that in the residential apartment world, year over year leases, when they're turning over, are up something like 18 to 20%. So that's pretty incredible.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We're used to underwriting 2.5%, 3% rent increases per year. It's like 41% in Austin and 30% in Miami or vice versa. These are crazy numbers. They're not sustainable. They won't last forever. So we're in a strange time. So be wary. When times are this good, you tend to wonder what's on the other side of those good times.
That's a very good comment. I agree with you 100%. All right. So I think we understand cash flow. Then you said appreciation. Just help us for somebody who's very new to this game. What do you think about when you say appreciation?
Sure. Think of when you own a house. A lot of people that are listening to you might own a house. And I said this the other night in a speech, you buy a house and 10 years later, your house is worth more. You think people say that's one of my biggest investment is my house. Your house is worth more. And my comment to them is your house really worth more? What changed about your house if you didn't add to it or anything like that? Is it that the house became worth more or that the dollars that it takes to buy that house are more? It takes more dollars to buy that house. So truly, real estate doesn't always appreciate. But again, if you change the timeline, like in the equities market, typically over time, real estate, goods and services and hard assets such as that, they'll tend to rise in values. So and you just illustrated it with your condo. You bought it for X and it's worth a ton more now 22 years later. Yeah. So that's money in your pocket, inflated money, but it's money in your pocket.
Well, I think that's a really good point because I think when most people think about real estate, they do think about what I bought it for and what I sold it for 10 years later, and they haven't realized that the value of the dollar over that time went down. So So it may feel like this, but really maybe it's just like this. Maybe the house just barely outpaced the devaluation of the dollar. So for me, and I'm curious if you're the same way, I look at appreciation as a bonus. That's just, if I beat inflation with appreciation, that I just got lucky. I bought in the right market, but I don't buy anything banking on appreciation. My focus is primarily on cash flow. And then we'll go into depreciation here in a minute. Do you think of it the same way?
Yeah, I do. And sometimes almost to a fault. I was a pure cash flow guy ever since I read Robert's book and saw the income statement, and I wanted stuff in the asset box. So if it was going to create $1 of extra passive cash flow for me or $1,000, I put it in there. And there's nothing wrong with some capital gains and appreciation. But, the philosophy for me, and sounds like for you, is, go for the cash flow, because once you've got enough of that cash flow to pay for your lifestyle, you can pretty much do whatever you want, whether it's make more or go learn to play the guitar or something, whatever you choose.
Amen. Amen. For me, it's learn to mountain bike, but I'm with you. I like that extra time. All right. So then you said amortization. And I think most people understand what that is. Each month, a portion of your mortgage payment or your investment property payment is going towards first interest and then towards amortization. And that's the pay down of the loan. Just out of curiosity, do you ever take your extra cash flow and put it towards the principal, Tom, or do you keep that cash flow building for the next acquisition?
I use it for the next. I use it to buy something else.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amen. Same thought process here. I tell people, I get a lot of clients that call and say, hey, I'm interested in doing a 15-year fixed. And I said, okay, do you know what the rate of inflation is today? And they say, I don't know, something like 6 or 7%. And I say, yeah. And do you know what the rate of a 30-year fixed mortgage is? And well, today, let's say maybe it's 5%. And I said, well, the economy the economics is paying you 2% a year to take that 30-year loan, because the rate of inflation is higher than the rate of interest. So your debt is actually devaluating faster. You don't want to pay that, as you said earlier, Tom, you don't want to pay that back with 2037 money. You want to pay that with 2052 money. You want to stretch that out as far as possible.
Well put. That's good advice. Great advice.
Yeah. All right. So I think we got amortization. I would love you to explain depreciation. And of course, maybe at the tail end, we can talk a little bit about qualifying as a real estate professional, but could you explain that to us?
Yeah. Depreciation, it's a gift. It's magic. It's a gift. I know I'm using a lot of hyperbole here, but the United States government, I wrote in my book that the U.S. is a tax haven. Everybody's always looking, I've got to move to Puerto Rico or I've got to do this and that. U.S. is a tax haven because the tax code is written as a series of inducements to the population. There are things that the U.S. government needs. We need housing. We need small businesses. We need energy. If you look at all those things, there's big tax breaks. So depreciation is the tax break they give us in real estate, among others. And what it is it's basically a phantom loss. It's a loss you're able to take against your gains. So if you buy a building, the assumption is that most of that building will wear out. So if it sits on a piece of land, maybe 20% of your purchase price is the land, but 80% of that is that office building or that apartment complex or house that sits on that land. That wears out. The IRS knows that wears out. And in standard terms, you can depreciate your residential property over 27 and a half years. If it's an office building, it's 39 years. That's pretty good. It takes a little bit of cash off of takes income off of your plate each year. Right. And that's tax you don't have to pay. So we'll get to the cost seg part in a minute, but that's what happened with me. As I was a doctor, I was making W-2 income. I owned my practice, but I paid myself a salary. And so I got taxed at the highest ordinary income rates. And over time, my taxes my blended tax rate started lowering because this real estate that I was investing in was not being taxed or being taxed less. So I used to run through the house and show my wife a K1 if I invested in somebody else's deal, or if it was my own internal K1, I'd say, look how much money I lost. And she thought I was a crazy man. But it was awesome. And so that started lowering things. And then, the Tax Act, and was in 2012, created the bonus depreciation, which is going to start to sunset after this year. But bonus depreciation in simple terms means instead of taking everything over 39 years or 27 and a half years, you get to squeeze a bunch of it into the very first year you buy it, which is one of the reasons why my CPA sent me that note, because I had a lot of gains last year. Made a lot more money than I ever did as a doctor, but paid zero taxes because it's all passive and offset. So you can do things called cost segregations, and you can get bonus depreciation, and you can speed things up. So depreciation is a wonderful gift from the government, from the IRS. They want you to use it. It's black and white, and it's a way to not pay taxes. And every dollar of tax that you don't pay is a 100% return on your investment.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, Robert, Cosmo's animated here. Robert Kiyosaki says that the biggest expense of your life, I think he said it's going to be death and taxes, if I remember right. I heard him say that somewhere, but that was one of those takeaways that I, as a very young man, I remember listening to that book on tape, literally on tape at that time. And I thought, and he showed that cash flow quadrant, and he says the W-2 are taxed at the highest rate, and the investors and the big business owners are taxed at the lowest rate. And it was something that I understood conceptually, but I'll tell you what, when you look at your tax return and you're paying single digit taxes because of the depreciation or no taxes because of the depreciation, that is a life-changing event in terms of the amount of money you have left over to then invest in the next property. And I told my wife a few years back, I said, so babe, what do you want to do? Do you want to pay taxes or you want to buy another building? And that's
good question.
That's how I look at it. And that's a loaded question, Tom, because she manages the accounting and the Yardi and the Buildium and all the accounting for all of our buildings. So, another building for me is fun. Another building for her is work. So I had to really sell her. Hey, you're writing the check either way. We're either buying another building or we're going to pay the IRS this year. Which way you want to go? But
well, you can tell her with the money you make on that next building, you can hire somebody to do her job.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. It's 100% true. In fact, we for the grace of God, just hired that person. I hope that will retire my wife. She's ready. Do you want to talk any more about tax segregation? I mean, I know in order to qualify for that bonus depreciation, we have to qualify as a real estate professional. Do you want to touch on that at all, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's sort of two-phased there. I mean, you don't necessarily have to qualify as a real estate professional if you have a bunch of passive income, because that bonus depreciation can be offset against its passive losses against passive gains.
Great point.
People that are professionals, doctors, lawyers, most of we are people that have other jobs. We get taxed at ordinary income rates. There is a thing called real estate professional, which you can get. You have to spend 51% of your time working on real estate. Most of your income needs to come from real estate. You have to spend 750 hours working on it, and there's rules. But and so it's difficult for most doctors. But what's a cool thing for doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, whatever, that person can do what they do best and create the income, and they can have a spouse that, if it's a non-working spouse or a spouse that has the time to become a real estate professional, that'll do the trick for you as well. So it's a nice little trick. Not everybody can do it. Again, it's a super legal thing. You just have to have all the documentation, and then you're able to write off ordinary income using passive losses. Again, huge savings. You're saving.
That's the magic pill right there.
Right,
and check with your CPA, because if you've ever taken a Sunday morning to read the IRS tax code, boy, I'll tell you what, you're going to need 3 cups of coffee and a dictionary, because they don't make it easy on you. So really dive in and check with your CPA on that. But there is magic to be had as it relates to reducing your tax consequence by owning investment properties.
Yeah.
Tom, I want to ask one more question specifically to doctors and medical professionals that are so busy and spending so much of their energy to stay on top of their craft and the latest in medical technology that's coming out and manage their family. If you were a young physician today, just getting started, how would you get started in real estate? Let's say we've got somebody coming out of a fellowship or coming out of a residency. They're taking their first attending job. and they're trying to figure out what's step one? Where do I go?
What do I do? Yeah, it seems like such a big elephant to eat, right? But
Amen.
the old joke, you how to eat an elephant one bite at a time. So you just start. And the easiest way to, and it's so easy right now, easiest way to start is get some education. Some people that are listening to this might not understand all the terms we were using, the depreciation, cost segregation, things like that, right? So you start learning, and you can read books. There's a million books out there. I've got a few. I've got a few suggestions to get started. And reading books helps. Podcasts help. Books on tape. So get some information. Get a bit of a base. And as you said, most of your learning really does come from jumping in there, but you got to start somewhere. And so learn a little bit. And then I always suggest that people, rather than even jumping in right then, is go meet some people that are doing what you like to do. Network, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
Just go meet some other folks, provide value to them. Just meet some people. What'll happen is that you'll take that base of knowledge that you've started learning in books, but it doesn't really sink in until you start kind of utilizing it and talking to other people. You'll talk to other folks. Number one, you'll meet people that are moving in the same direction as you. You'll get ideas. You'll find out what you don't know, because most of us don't know what we don't know. And it's great hanging out with other people that are thinking. You get 5 people in a room, everybody has a different thought process. Everybody has a different experience. And you get to, and all 5 of you get to absorb that experience. So as you network with other folks, that will take you in whatever direction you want to go. You might want to invest in syndications and just be a passive investor. You might want to start buying single family homes or buying office buildings like you, or building apartments like me. You start at the bottom. I have a Navy SEAL friend who's one of my favorite quotes is, everybody has a first day. We all start somewhere. And I started with zero knowledge, and I suspect you did too. We all start somewhere. And so get to know some people that are doing that. And then in time, you can start learning actively, start doing your things. Maybe if you don't want to learn it all on your own, pick somebody else to partner with. You guys go in there and split the profit and split the pain, and you both get 100% of the education. So great ways to get started. What will happen is it will just grow. It'll grow and learn, and you add zeros to the ends of the deals, and you can take it as far as you want, or you can stop whenever you want to.
I think that was beautifully said. What was coming up for me, Tom, was the quote from Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And in that book, he talks a lot about masterminds. You called it an event, but what happens is people of like mind get together to solve problems and to collaborate, and magic happens. And in that book, what Napoleon says is, what a man can conceive and believe, he can achieve. And so what happens when you get around a seminar, what happens when you get around a group of people that are doing it, is you start to conceive, and you see Tom did it. He was a busy surgeon. Look at all his accolades as a medical professional. Now you start to believe, and the achievement, the jump from that moment, conceive and believe, to achieve, is narrow. The jump between achieve and day one is big. So you just got to narrow that gap by getting involved with people who are doing it, learning and reading from people, listening to podcasts. All of a sudden, you're going to be like, I can do this. And once you hit that moment, the gap between there and achievement is incredibly small.
That is the part that I left out. And that's probably the most important part about getting to know other people, getting into seminars and networks and things like that. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, because once you know, hey, this can be done, then you're off to the races. So Well said. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Well, this has been a total joy. I know this is going to be one of our most popular podcast episodes. Tom, I want to make sure that our audience knows where to find you, where they can get your books. Where would you like them to connect with you and follow what you're doing?
You bet. And so there's a couple ways. Actually, in the middle of changing the brand. How's this for transparency? So right now it's called richdoctor.com. So you can go to richdoctor.com. The book's there. You can sign up for some free things, that sort of thing. And we're actually changing it to Rich Life. And so so you can buy the book on Amazon, Why Doctors Don't Get Rich. There's a link on the website. I'm always happy to talk to folks. I put out a blog with some videos and things like that, just real estate tips and personal development tips. And then if anybody wants some free resources, things that have helped me over the last 30 years do what I've done, go to rich.life/toolkit. I got several things there that are really helpful for folks, and reach out anytime you wish.
Tom, thank you, buddy. I appreciate you sharing so generously. I feel like this could go 3 hours, but you've got to get out of the country. So I hope you have a wonderful trip. Grateful for your time today. And I hope to have you back in the future, Tom.
What a good time. I'd love to come back. I learned some stuff here, and I intend to do that again.
Thank you. Have a great day, buddy.